Hey, and welcome to this week's exclusive member tutorials where we're going to be talking all things pad. So, how to create your own lush-sounding, dreamy pad sounds. We'll be covering quite a lot of ground with bits of sound design, mixing, audio editing, effects processing, so loads of different areas. And we're going to start off working with audio samples in the DAW, just because I think it's a slightly clearer way of you seeing exactly what's going on and understanding the main processes involved. And then we'll move on to doing similar things, but taking it a stage further, working with instruments like synths and samplers. So yeah, let's get started. First up then, let's drag the sample that I found in Loop Cloud into Ableton. So I found this just by doing a search for pad one-shots, and I've now got this 2-bar long, pretty much fully sustained Prophet pad sample that I found in the Fred Everything Deep Analog House Pack. So yeah, with it being fully sustained, we've got plenty to work with level-wise. So let's just drag it out and into Ableton. And let's just make sure we've got some headroom there. Bring it down by 12 dB. So one of the most fundamental aspects when you're designing a pad is the amplitude envelope. At the moment you can see we've got a very rapid fade in and out, the start and end. And then otherwise it's max volume all the way through. What we want with a pad instead is a very gentle fade in. So we can do that just by dragging the edge of the audio clip here. And then similarly, a nice long fade out. We can refine that shape by making the curve a bit steeper, or more gradual if we want to change the way it fades in and out. So at the moment we've just got one single note playing, much like just having one oscillator on a synthesizer. So what we're going to do is simulate the effect of having multiple oscillators or multiple notes. So what I'm going to do is take this track and I'm just going to duplicate the whole thing. So now we've got two of the same. And this then allows us to do all sorts of things. If I double click on the audio clip down here, one thing we might like to do is slightly detune the sample. So rather than shift it in whole semitones initially, we're just going to shift it in fractions of a semitone just to push it a little bit out of tune with the other one. And the effect you get there is a really nice transformation of the sound. Have a listen. So here's without it. So yeah, it adds a really nice, pleasant, buzzy richness and presence and a little bit of movement to the sound as well, which is something you're often after with sound design. The other thing we could, of course, do is shift the audio sample up in whole semitones to create an interval or a chord. But just to be particularly clever, what I'm going to do is take our kind of detuned, doubled up sound here, and I'm going to duplicate both of these tracks. So we've now got 4 of them, and with these 2 at the bottom here, I'm going to shift them up to a fifth above, so 7 semitones. Now when I do this, I'm going to need to think about the warp mode, because at the moment it's set to beats. So if I, for example, shift this one up by 7 semitones, which is quite a way up, and then have a listen to it. So that little dropout there is created by the gaps you can get with the beats warping algorithm. So if I instead switch it to complex, no dropouts, and a much better quality of sound. So I'm going to do that for both of these two and shift them both up by 7. So now, if I just solo those 2, there we have our nice, slightly greasy 7th interval on top, and then all 4. Yeah, sounding good. Next thing we're going to do is just mix them a little bit. So if you imagine when you're designing a sound, you often want to have the harmonics or the frequencies higher up in the range at slightly lower levels generally. So what I'm going to do is select both of these two. I'll just enlarge all of these. I select both of these two, my fifth interval, and just bring them down a bit. Yeah, sounding good. Now what we're going to do is group all of these together so we can control them all on the one single track here. And the first thing we're going to do is just check out what frequencies we've got going on with an EQ8. So it's looking okay, but there's a few things I'm going to do. Firstly, get rid of the bits we definitely don't want, like the very lowest sub. Then also bring these peaks just down a touch because they're a little bit too dominant at the moment, and perhaps even bring the upper ones up a bit. So I'm going to use a high pass with a steep slope just to get rid of all that. Then I'm going to use a low shelf for the next band. So these aren't dominating quite so much. And then I'm just going to turn on band 4 here, this high shelf, just to turn these upper ones up a bit. So now we've got a bit more going on up top here. And what I might do actually is just bring up the level of these higher frequency samples as well. So yeah, slightly better balance with more top end now. So now that we've got more going on up top, what we could do is use a filter to shape those upper frequencies over time. So we get kind of a sweep in of frequency content as well as the level going up and down. So yeah, let's record that in. None of my tracks are record armed, and I have the automation switch turned on there, so I can just hit record and then move my filter around to shape those upper frequencies. And if I want to have a look at that, I can always get another EQ on the end. So yeah, that's working quite well.